Welcome to the Course of Action podcast. I am your host, Jeff Clark. This is the show that dives into the incredible courses of action taken by incredible people doing incredible things. My guests today, and I'm very honored to have them, are Jennifer Byrne and Steve Nisbet, the founders of Shields and Stripes. They are an organization focusing on multidisciplinary approaches to care for our true American heroes, our nation's first responders, and veterans. It is my pleasure to introduce and have them on the show today, the founders of Shields and Stripes. All right, guys, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it. What I want to do right out the gate is ask a big question, and I want you each to take turns answering it because it's going to lead into a larger discussion. And as all of us as veterans, it's nice to have, Air Force people in the room along with me. But what is mental health to you in your words?
I can start out if you'd like. So the way that I view mental health is very similar to the way that I view physical health. You're born and you go along with life, and at some time you roll your ankle or you get a wrist injury. And everyone knows the classic formula for that, which is RICE, the rest, ice, compression, elevation. You're down for a couple of weeks and then you get better, right? Well, mental health is very similar. There are times that your mental health is going to be better, and there are times that your mental health is going to be worse. So you go through life, and let's say, someone passes away, your grandma passes away. Well, I view that as similar to a physical injury. So it's a mental injury. But for some reason, it's stigmatized and it's looked at as weak. And you have to really work at it in order to get your mental health back to the level where you can perform. So for me, mental health is something that ebbs and flows throughout life, and something that we constantly have to work on, similar to physical injuries, to make sure we are performing at our most optimal level. I
like that. Steve?
Sure. Just like Jen said, I think it goes in waves. Mental health to me is how well you can perform at your optimal level without distractions. And so am I able to perform at my highest level without having to think about other things, without other things on my mind distracting me from what I need to do? And especially in my prior life, my prior career field, that was extremely important. I can't be jumping out of a plane, but also thinking about things at home or issues that I have at home, or reliving events as I'm about to exit an aircraft, into an austere environment. So mental health, ties into your physical health, ties into your sleep. And so the way my therapist explained it to me is it's a line, an arbitrary line. And we're always managing going above and below the line. So how well can you manage yourself going back below the line? Typically, in most of our career fields, in special operations, we're always above the line, and we never pull ourselves back below that line of our steady state. Now, as we start to learn more about mental health and how we can bring ourselves back below the line with different coping mechanisms and tools and strategies, that's the key to mental health and actually performing at your optimal level without those distractions.
Got it. So you were 16 years Air Force Pararescue. Obviously saw a lot of things. It's a physically demanding career field. I've known a couple of people that have been in it, known a couple of people that have gone through the pipeline of training and washed out. I've heard plenty of stories. It's the elite of the Air Force. It's a very, very demanding in all aspects of the word. And Jen, of course, you were in physical therapy, correct?
Close. I was an occupational therapist for the Air Force.
Occupational therapy.
Yep.
So both sides of the coin, kind of. One person is working on therapy side, the other person is working on the operational side and needing you guys need kind of each other, which is interesting about how you guys founded Shields and Stripes, which is focused more on the holistic performance of the individual as opposed to just mental health. And that's why I really wanted to ask that big question out the gate is, what is mental health to you? Because a lot of people think mental health is just something that's wrong with your brain, just something wrong with your personality or whatever it may be. And we tend to forget the bigger picture of it and the performance and the injury side, which I think is really interested in how you guys founded Shields and Stripes. And so let's dig into that. How did you guys meet and kind of formulate this idea?
So as I started progressing through my medical retirement, and I started coming up with the idea, I was using our human performance staff within my organization, which we had a really robust staff of strength conditioning coaches, physical therapists, nutritionists, and psychologists, really all working together to keep us performing at that optimal level. And as I started going through my medical retirement, I saw those resources going away. I was going to be subject to the VA system. I was talking to guys that were outside already, how they continue to manage their mental health, their physical health, what do they do, and seeing all these different puzzle pieces they have to put together, to make it work for them. And it seemed very challenging for somebody who's not as motivated or sees that as an obstacle. It's not going to tie in together. It's not easy to do unless you have a lot of perseverance to do that. So along with seeing law enforcement, first responders getting just going through a lot of issues throughout the news and their daily life, how can I help them receive the same care that I got? And so as I started kicking around the idea, I started looking online to see who was performing or at least doing something very similar to what I want to do. And I saw a lot of different organizations that were similar, but not quite doing it to the extent that I want to do it at. And the closest that I came to was Jen's business, 5x5 Performance Therapy. And so I called her up, or actually, I friended her on LinkedIn. And it just so happened I became her 500th. And I wasn't going to message her, but she messaged me and congratulated me for being the 500th friend. And I was like, sweet. Well, since you're going to message me, let's have a conversation because you're doing something that I want to do.
Right.
I want to know how you're doing it. What are the lessons you learned? And, do you have your own facility? These kinds of things. So we set up a phone call. And this was in February of this year that we first met. And then had about an hour and a half long conversation of just my experience, what I was going through, what I want to do. And then started just kicking around some ideas. And as we kind of kicked around ideas and what we more so, Jen was giving me advice. And as I started developing this, I was like, Jen, I need you to be just, as much involved with this as I am. I'm like, are you willing to join me in this journey? Are you willing to jump in the deep water with me and be a co-founder in this? And it really was just me and her in the beginning. And then we founded it in April, started the entity and just started building the team. So like you said, me as the receiving end and her as the treating end, I think we were able to combine and really create this program from both views and both perspectives on what each I guess therapist and participant should be receiving and should be giving to each other. So I had a vision of what I wanted to accomplish. She had some additional visions of how she wanted to see it, and I think both of those aligned so greatly that we created this really beautiful program. If you want to some stuff.
Yeah, Jennifer was the one who crushed my ideas of what occupational therapy was, because I foolishly thought occupational therapy was just for people who had like an injury on the job. That's all I thought it was. I never thought anything different just because I didn't know and I'd never gone to it. So I think me and her got on a phone call one time over LinkedIn or something like that, and she was telling me about it, and I was like, I had no idea. I feel like such an idiot, but I had no idea what occupational therapy was. And then she's telling me about 5x5 performance and all that, and I thought, oh, this is amazing stuff. This is so awesome. It totally changed my outlook and my thoughts on what, therapy was, to the point where I even went out and sought some help myself just because I didn't know what I was missing. I had no idea. So it was cool to do that. And Jen, I'll let you kind of go into it some more about how your side of joining the organization with Steve went, and you can kind of shed some light into your perspective on the more of the therapy side coming into his partnership.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. That's an honor. I'm honored that I was able to inspire you, to
Absolutely.
go out and seek different services. So yeah, as you know, I was an occupational therapist in the Air Force for 7 years, and during that time, I had a lot of amazing experiences, and a part of those experiences was building these sports medicine teams that Steve talks about. So the Air Force, for their special operators, does a very good job with these POTF teams. So physical therapy, nutrition, strength and conditioning, athletic training. I was a big part of bringing occupational therapy into that sphere. So with that, I was really able to spend a lot of time in the special operations community. I'm also, my husband's a combat rescue officer, so I also have that spouse perspective. So I understand how important family is in the healing process.
Right.
So yeah, during that time, as an occupational therapist, my role was really to focus on the holistic person. So what are the things that physical therapy and nutrition and strength and conditioning don't talk about? Well, a lot. Sleep performance, ergonomics, going out on rucks with the guys. How do you pack your ruck? What kind of stretches do you do beforehand in order to prevent those gnarly neck injuries that you get when you're rucking for hours at a time? So all of those things to really tie a bow on holistic performance. So when I transitioned out because I felt like I could do more and I needed to do more.
Right.
I just had that kind of higher calling, I think. So I was on that providing side as a therapist. I was able to really help a lot of people come out of some pretty dark times. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and I myself went through, some dark times as well, some mental injuries, just like we talked about as before, and was able to overcome those. So when Steve reached out to me, and by the way, Steve has an incredible story. When Steve reached out to me and I listened to him and I listened to his mental health injuries and how he was able to overcome those mental health injuries with the support of these holistic teams, things just started to click. So,
Right.
we really believe that first responders, basically our nation's heroes, first responders, and veterans alike, not only deserve this kind of quality care, but they require it. And we know that by providing someone with holistic quality services, we're reinvesting into that person, we're investing into
Hmm.
their families, and then that increases the quality of services that they're able to provide for our communities. Um,
I like that you said require it because it makes it sound it's not optional, and something I've always preached in. I'm a big junkie on leadership, but something I've always preached on leadership, and when I talk to some of my clients and mentors is, leadership is an investment. So you have to invest in people if you want people to work out, especially if you're in jobs like our first responders, our military. And my wife works in the emergency room right now as a physician, and she gets her butt kicked every single shift. And it's important for her to come home and kind of, detox and kind of relax and chill out because it's a very demanding job. And I like that you said required because it should be a requirement to invest in people. We shouldn't assume when people get off shift that they go home and they hang up the vest, hang up the white coat, take off the uniform and go, "Oh, I'm glad that's over. I'm good now." That's not true. They turn to things, alcohol, drugs, violence, because there's no way of coping with those things. And I really like that you said required. And something that you told me a while back when you were talking about performance and you mentioned so many things that hit home with me, which is why I went out and I got my sleep study done. And it turns out I had sleep apnea. I went and saw a counselor through the VA. I'm one of the success stories out of the VA system because I went and I said, I need this, this, and this. And I want to talk to all these people, and I'm having all these problems gripping with, being on the outside now, and, both my shoulders don't work. My back doesn't work. I can't even push mow my yard anymore. I had to buy a riding lawnmower. Like all these things you just don't see and you don't think of, you have to start dealing with. And when you said some of the things you said about performance therapy when we had that first discussion, blew my mind. And it inspired me to go out and say, you know what, I need to work on a handful of these things and see where I can get and go forward, which I think is so cool that just a simple conversation could do that. And you guys have an entire organization built around it now. So you're focusing on the holistic performance of people, from the mental to the physical and everything in between. How does Shields and Stripes operate in order to do that and provide such an awesome service in an environment where maybe it's not necessarily face-to-face all the time?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So what we came up with was a combination of a couple things. First and foremost, like I said, and like you hit the nail on the head, if someone encounters trauma, no matter if they want physical therapy, no matter if they want nutrition, they're getting it all. You get everything because we know everything works together. We know the
Right.
human body, you can't just, fix a broken arm. You also have to fix the car accident and the trauma from that resulted in that broken arm. So there's a lot of things that go into what we came up with. But the basis of Shields and Stripes is this. It's a 4-week, it's technically called an intensive outpatient model. So for 4 weeks, the athletes show up and they go through 5 days per week and, between 6 and 7 hours from physical therapy, one-on-one psych, occupational therapy, nutrition. They're working out, strength and conditioning, massage therapy. It's everything for 4 weeks. So that
Wow.
is really focused on the person. And we have different phases where, it's up front, it's a lot of, we're going to do this for you, transitioning to that 4th week. Okay, now you have the tools. Show me how you do this. And then when they transition to their home and work environments, they get an additional 12 weeks of telehealth therapy from the psych and the occupational therapist to make sure that all of those concepts that they learned in person are now transferred to the home and the work environment. And we specifically incorporate family into the 12-week telehealth because we know that family members are often the first ones to notice a change in their loved ones. So to leave them out of the scene is a foul. So that's really, we've also got layers of spiritual health. So right now, our athletes have the option to seek counseling from a prior PJ, who's now a pastor.
Okay.
So just kind of making sure that all of the pillars of what we know to be evidence-based holistic health are really addressed in the 4-week in-person and then the 12-week model.
So, Steve, what was it like for you on kind of the athlete side of this program? And what did you, when you guys were collaborating on putting all this together, what did you, as the athlete, so to speak, what did you kind of have as an input on this? Where were things that blew your mind? What were things that you changed? How did you come up with a 4-week and the 12-week structure after having conversations with Jen?
So when I first started kicking around this idea, and as I was transitioning out, I had a shoulder injury in the past, and I went to a place called Exos. It's a performance facility that typically works with NFL athletes and professional athletes, at least what they're mostly well known for. also do corporate wellness programs within large corporations. And so in our program, SOCOM sends their combat athletes down there for injuries for physical rehab. And I went down there for 4 weeks, and down there being Pensacola, Florida, at their Gulf Breeze location. Spent 4 weeks down there, and it was probably one of the best trips I ever had during my military career, because I focused. It was the first time in my career I could focus on just myself and making myself healthy. I have to worry about anything regarding work. I didn't have emails to check. I didn't have training schedules to plan. I didn't have anything to worry about but make myself healthy.
Just you.
Exactly. And so I really enjoyed that experience. I did that in early 2019, and as I continued throughout my career and started to finish out my career, I always went back to that as being one of the things I enjoyed the most. At least one of the trips I enjoyed the most about my career, and I really took a liking to human performance. I consider myself to be a pretty fit individual. I like fitness. I like health and wellness. I like recovery. And then as I started to explore my mental health and go through therapy myself, I was like, man, what if we combine the two? And the way it's supposed to be done within SOCOM, within the POTF program, or the Preservation of the Force and Family, how it's supposed to be done, and combine those and really create this whole body and mind and spirit concept. And so I had sat down with my therapist and I was like, hey, if I'm kicking around this idea, what would be a decent length? If to me, 4 weeks is a long time to ask of somebody who's not typically in the military. In the military, we're used to TDYs, used to being gone, used to deployments. For someone that
4 weeks would be short.
for someone that's in law enforcement and a firefighter, like 4 weeks is actually a long time for some other families that have never served in the military, and being gone for 4 weeks, questionable if they're receiving a paycheck and things like that. So 4 weeks was my limit to be gone, and or to ask a family member to be gone for. And so I asked my therapist at the time, hey, how can we create a program, or what's the minimum amount of sessions that we can use to treat somebody using different therapy modalities within that 4 weeks. And so came up between 10 and 12 sessions is ideal. And so as I started to look at the schedule, maximize maybe 10 participants at a time, up to 2 therapists, really started to build out this framework of what I wanted it to be. And so I was very focused on just that 4-week in-person therapy. And as Jen joined me, and we started kicking this back and forth and optimizing this framework, she was like, hey, we need to have follow through and have that additional virtual therapy when they leave, and really include the families. And that's something that I think most, if not all, programs are missing, is that family aspect when they go back home, so the family understands exactly what they were going through, what they were doing, why they were even gone in the first place. And that's actually what most of our partnerships with other organizations like the most, is that we have that follow through, and we have that virtual therapy, and bring in the families, because that is important. We can't just put a Band-Aid on a wound and then tell them to walk it off. We got to make sure that's taken care of. And so that is my analogy. Is most other programs, that they're all great, but I think a lot of them are putting a Band-Aid on a bleed that needs surgery, and we're going to do that figurative surgery, if you will, to make sure that all of the healing takes place, and that they no longer just put a Band-Aid on that wound and then go back to work and then reopen that wound. We can do that surgery, and then now they have long-term lasting effects. That's the most important.
Yeah, and they have tools that they can take back to their trade, and when the next event, whatever it may be, comes up, they approach it differently. And I think that was something that I learned in therapy. And once I had that diagnosis of anxiety with a lot of things, my focus was, I don't want to be drugged and go through this program for 12 weeks and then call you guys 6 months from now. What are some tools that I can use to move on and to heal? And I think that follow through is big. And a lot of programs, especially when you get out of the military, you never hear from them again, and to no fault of theirs necessarily. There's no program designed to follow up with you. And they pass that over to the VA, and we all know the problems the VA has internally. And there's all kinds of issues, not for lack of trying or for lack of good quality people, because there are some there. But the programs have a lot of red tape about them. You want to talk about red tape? The VA is probably the epitome of red tape in the government. But passing that on is a little different, and then you have an organization that isn't performing optimal, in for better sakes of the word. But how can people come to you guys and start working on getting into one of these programs? And how do you eliminate some of the worries about being gone for 4 weeks, or having to dedicate the time, or even paying for it? What are some of the challenges and things that you guys have done when somebody wants to approach you?
So just to give you a picture of what our next year looks like, we are holding our next pilot in January. So we hosted our first pilot in partnership with Exos here in Florida last month, and we had 4 participants. It was 1 week of in-person and 3 weeks of telehealth. In January, we are progressing to 2 weeks of in-person and 6 weeks of telehealth. And during this time, I think it's worth it to say that, we are always going to be trying to improve. It wouldn't be accurate to tell you that we have perfected Shields and Stripes yet, because we haven't, and it's going to take us a really long time to do that. So one of the things you just asked about was, how do we ease, an athlete being away for that period of time? Well, I think what Steve and I and the team learned, because we're all veterans, was we have to be really, really specific, not just to include the family in the aftercare. We have to do a better job including the family into the preparation of coming to us, and then also during, because police officer spouses, firefighter spouses, guess what? They're not used to TDYs. It's a whole different level of challenge. So that's one thing that we definitely intend to improve upon for our next pilot, which will be in Arizona in January. And we are going to be definitely better about incorporating the family into the whole process. But if someone has experienced a trauma or a mental injury, and they're a veteran or a first responder, then they qualify. And what we're doing is just being good humans. You can fill out the application on our website. That's www.shieldsandstripes.org, and you can fill out that application, send it to the contact email, and we review it. Myself and the psych review the application, and then we have an in-person talk with every single applicant. So that way, if they're not the right fit for our 2-week program, maybe they're the right fit for our 4-week phase in August. So we always make sure that every person has some kind of recommendation to get themselves help, even if they're not the right fit for, our pilot. But
so as you grow, essentially because you guys have been only rolling since April, so by no means should anybody expect perfection out of your program. You're obviously building upon it, but by no means should a family of any hero or any athlete be worried about coming to you guys and being away, because you're putting a priority on the family. They shouldn't necessarily be worried about the cost, because you obviously have supportive organizations that are helping you guys be good humans,
yes,
and deliver these services.
Cost-free for the athletes. We're getting very patriotic people to help us out with sponsoring athletes, and then we're going to go for state and government grants as we get bigger.
So not only are you delivering a whole different level of performance therapy to the people who need it most, you're doing it because you're just awesome people, and you have awesome people behind you that are promoting it. And a lot of times when people hear the word free, they kind of go, well, how free is it? But for you guys, you're taking care of them and the family. You're doing everything that you can and getting them the help they need. So you said somebody goes to your website, they fill out the application. The turnaround time is expected to be a couple weeks, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then they can start making arrangements with your team of experts. And the next one is in January.
The next one is in January, yep. And we have, like I said, the psych and I do Zoom talks with every person, and then you're notified if you are, selected for the pilot study or if you're not. So the next one is in January. There's 6 athletes going through that one. And then we're having IOC phase in August, where that's the full 4 weeks of in-person, 12 weeks of telehealth, and 10 athletes. And so that is the pilot phase, right? So as soon as we kick off 2023, we intend to have 4 different cohorts of 10 athletes each going through the 4 weeks plus the 12 weeks of telehealth.
Wow. So you guys all go in person, the whole team goes in person to the site that you're doing the pilot at?
Not necessarily. So we were all there were 4 leadership in person for the pilot. As we continue to rock and roll, Steve and I will be in person for some of the time. So we'll kind of high five. He'll be in and then I'll be out, and vice versa, so that we can start empowering our team to be able to run the program, and we can focus on things like every nonprofit just needs money to run. So we really
yes.
on financials. We need to be focused on strategy, all of the different aspects of running a nonprofit, while we really empower our team members to run the ops of each program.
Right. A lot of people think, they have this stigma of what a nonprofit is. Oh, there's no money in nonprofits. Well, you're very wrong. Nonprofits, as a business major myself, going for my doctorate in business, nonprofits need money. They're just not churning out money and making a profit. You can still make money up to a certain amount in nonprofits. And you have to have money to operate and to put on these programs. So it's very much, you do need a business side to it. And I commend you guys for starting a nonprofit, because it is a massive endeavor. But what I want to ask now, and I'll ask Steve this first, and then I'll ask you it, because I think there's going to be 2 different perspectives on it, is what has it been like to see people go through the program and get the results on the other side that you wanted to see happen? What has that experience, seeing the fruits of your labor come to kind of, an impasse where you get that result, and how has that changed your mind about going forward, and how has it made improvements to the organization?
Excellent question. Yeah, I'm thinking of how I want to answer this. To watch our first year go through, and like Jen was saying, we've got our first cohorts, but in the future for growth, we're going to have multiple programs, so people typically won't have to wait. The selection process won't be as robust and won't be as long, and it'll be churning out, more people to get more help as fast as possible. But to answer your question, to watch our first guys and girls go through the program, it was really fulfilling, because every day I always ask myself to make sure that, hey, am I doing the right things to make sure that I'm helping the right people, and this is going to work. That's always going to be in my mind. Am I doing exactly what I need to be doing to make these things work? And to see it come to life, to see it in fruition, and now keep in mind the timeline in which this happened. I wasn't going to execute this till year 2024. And then I just decided we're going to do this, and we're just going to jump in. And as many times as I was told it was going to fail, I wasn't going to quit. And so now here we are, after starting in April, and less than 6 months later, running our first program, and changing the outlook of 4 individuals that just went through our program. And by halfway through their first week, you can see a difference, a visual difference, a tangible difference in how somebody, views themselves and views the world around them. More importantly, not just what they experience themselves, but what their family says to themselves. And so we had a participant and their family, and he shared with us what his family said to him. And Jen knows a little bit more in detail what was said. But that is what fulfills me and goes, okay, I am doing the right thing. I am doing, this is working. This is exactly what we need. We need to do it more, and we need to do it faster, and we need to do it just as efficient every single time. If we can do it that way in 1 week, the exponential difference in 4 weeks plus the 12 weeks on the back end are going to be,
Oh yeah,
life changing
massive.
for all the participants going through it. So um, I always thank a team, thank everybody around me, and I'm blessed to be able to provide this through my pain and my struggles, what I went through, to be able to help other people um, using that pain and what I learned to help others. So I continue to keep it as a blessing, and like you said, this it operates solely on donations. It operates solely on people being good human beings and good individuals and wanting to see other people change for the better. And so all of that money goes towards them. None of us take a salary as of right now. So all of that money goes towards the athlete and the individual getting better. And it is pretty expensive to go to put them through it. And if I have to fund it myself, I will. But so far, we've had a lot of good human beings donating to us.
That's awesome. So, Jen, as someone who left the service because you wanted to do more, I want to hear how you feel about not just seeing people go through the program, but is it kind of like a mission accomplished moment for you? Was it worth taking the uniform off? What are your thoughts on that today?
So, first of all, when you and I met and when you invited me into this veterans discussion, I was going through this time in my life where I felt just completely lost, and I was not expecting feeling lost. I was going through this transition, thinking that I would be totally fine, and I wasn't. I didn't have the sense of community. I didn't feel like I was doing my life's work yet, and it felt really frustrating to me. So when you pulled me into this conversation with veterans who were acknowledging the way I felt, first of all, it was a game changer. And it took me, and that was probably, I don't know, December of last year. It took me 9 months. So our pilot went down in September, and I had been working really hard with Steve, and I've known in my heart this entire time that it was gonna work out. We were gonna do great things together. But there was a moment at this pilot where I stopped and looked around, and I finally felt like I had done the right thing. Like
Nice.
I finally felt like I was 100% where I was supposed to be, and I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And that was after one of the participants came in, and he said, "Hey, I feel love in my heart for the first time in years."
Oof.
And
That's huge.
and he's this big prior Navy guy, huge beard, and he said, "Jen, I haven't felt that shit in years."
Nice.
So yeah, it was worth taking the uniform off. I am working with Steve. I could not imagine working with a better co-founder, a more driven human being, and our team is equally as impressive. So not only do I get to work with these amazing humans, but we also get to work to give back to equally amazing humans. They just don't know it yet, and we get to help them see it. So yes,
Right.
it has been worth it. And this is going to be my life's work. Steve and I are going to be in this together for the next 70 years, give or take. So we're excited.
And it's a very cool perspective coming from, Steve, who pararescue 16 plus years, forced to medically retire. I was forced to medically retire as well. And it's kind of one of those things where you go, okay, so it's the end of the road now, but it feels very forced. It wasn't optional. You didn't click a retirement button. They forced you through this process. So it's very, not optional, type of thing. Whereas for you, you said, I'm leaving. I'm going to go do more. So coming from two different directions, meeting up and mashing together to put on your first program in September, graduating, I guess is what you guys probably call it, through the first four people, and just feeling that sense of, okay, we did it. Of course, it's not mission accomplished yet because it's far from over, but just to do something in so short of a time, from it hasn't even been a year since me and you, Jen, first met, and now you're changing lives. Of course, I knew that when you first told me about 5x5. I was like, she's changing lives already just by telling me I was wrong about occupational therapy, but to see what you were going to go into, and then now seeing what you're doing now, not even a year later, and you're doing another program in January, and it's only growing. I think is such an incredible story, and I'm sure we could talk about it forever. But what I want to talk about now is, as people hear this podcast and as people get to know what performance therapy is about and to understand it, what can they expect? What is kind of the big ask of them in order to be successful in this program? Because it's a give and take. You can't just show up and be like, okay, fix me. But what is the big ask from you guys for them to show up and have the success?
I think one of the big things that we talk to our applicants about is motivation. Like, here's the deal. If you come in and, you've had a really rough go at it and you're not motivated to get better, then you're not going to get better. The brain
Right.
is an extremely, extremely powerful thing. So if you want to get better, we can give you the tools to get better and to live a better life and to be a healthier and happier person. But if that's not something that you want, then it's not going to happen. So when I talk to the athletes, trying to see if they're a good fit for us, the number one thing I'm looking for is whether they're motivated to get better. And then also we ask for them to have an open mind, because they may not have gone through trauma psych. They may not have done the kind of psych that our trauma psych does. But we need you to have an open mind and give it your 100% and invest in this with passion, because we're passionate and the donors that got you there were passionate.
Right.
Motivation and an open mind are what we expect from our athletes when they step in the door.
Okay. Steve, as a former operator with that mindset, what have you seen in regards to the big ask? Anything different than what Jen said?
No, not much. I think what I find unique, and what I want to highlight is, as each of these groups come through, we have varying demographics or varying backgrounds. So you have police officers, firefighters, and veterans. We even had an active duty member go through with all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, experiencing very similar symptoms. And so you had this, a mix, a hodgepodge of just people showing up, and all of a sudden this community, this bond, this lifelong bond has just formed, that normally would not have taken place. And so you have a police officer working out with a firefighter, and you get the banter going on, and the trash talk happening, and it's fun and it's a great experience for them. And so I find joy in that. One thing that I ask of our participants that as they show up is to, number one, trust the process and trust the system. The coaches that are coaching them in strength conditioning are high level coaches working with professional athletes. So you're only going to get the top notch coaching. So typically not normally available to the rest of us. Same with the nutrition, same with physical therapy, all these high quality skills. So trust that these people will be taken care of, and that you will be taking care of you, and you will be taken care of in every aspect. And that goes the same with a mental health performance with our occupational therapist and our psychologists, because they all show up highly motivated and want to be there. They're there because they're passionate about it. They're not there because they're receiving a paycheck. They're there because they want to be there and they want to help you. So we ask that same thing of our athletes coming through the program, and in that process, I ask that they don't have any substance abuse problems. So if they do have some
Okay.
substance abuse problems, we will help them, but we'll help them find some sort of rehabilitation clinic to get off of that substance abuse. There's a lot of other nonprofits out there that focus on substance abuse. Warriors aren't one of them. So we like to funnel them towards those organizations and then hope that they come back to ours, ready to perform, ready to get to that level of performing at a high level. So those are the things that I ask of them, and it worked out really nicely on this particular program. I fully expect the next one to go just as good, if not better. So that's great.
So, last big question. Where do you guys see Shields and Stripes 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I kind of wrote them down, and there's a lot of different directions. In 5 years, I'd like to have a smooth programs at least 4 to 5 different facilities throughout the nation that are running, continuously in regards to their receiving applicants. It's an autonomous process. We're treating about 100 per year per facility. We have enough funding to be able to provide for all of those facilities, and a robust staff to provide for all of those. In 10 years from now, I'd like to own our own facility. I don't want to be working inside of somebody else's house. I don't want to be working inside of another person's gym. I want to own our facility. I want to own our full program, and then be able to house our participants to go through that. And hopefully we have 1, maybe 2, or maybe 3 facilities throughout the nation. Ideally, in 10 to 20 years, this is affecting the entire nation, and we can get facilities, at least built up inside or just outside of these large metropolitan areas. Your New York Cities, your Chicago's, your Minneapolis's, that are experiencing some significant trauma, both mostly in your public servant realm or public service, so your law enforcement and your firefighters and EMS responders. And as we continue to grow, we continue to expand our modalities of treatments, our different research methods, our different populations that we do treat, because some of our hospital workers are experiencing some of these problems as well, and what kind of assets, what kind of resources do they have. So those are things that we also want to pursue in the future.
So lots of partnerships, aggressive expansion. Obviously, what you guys have done in 6 months is pretty incredible. I think it would be very, plausible for you guys to own your own facilities in those 10 years. If you can do what you're doing in 6 months, I don't see why you couldn't do that in 10 years, especially when people start hearing about the impact of it and how results driven it is, and how people can come back and get the help they need. And we've talked about 2022, but Jen, to rehash again, for any of those listening that have kind of said, hey, I need to look at this some more. You can obviously go to the website, Shields and Stripes, but what can somebody say? I want to dig into this in 2022. What is going on next year?
Yep, it's January Pilot Study West in Arizona in partnership with Exos. That's 2 weeks of in-person and 6 weeks of telehealth. And then look for July or August for our IOC, which is essentially our true program. So that is either going to be at one of the 2 Exos facilities, likely Florida, and that's going to be 4 weeks of in-person with 12 weeks of telehealth.
So that's on the docket for 2022. Obviously, as you guys grow next year, you can offer more in 2023. Will even look even more robust. But before we kind of head out, what is the one thing that you want people to know about Shields and Stripes before this podcast ends?
One thing that I would like the people to know about our organization, about Shield and Stripes, is um, one of the questions that has stuck with me while we were down at our pilot program was, why do we care? Why do we care so much? And because everybody that's on the team that we built has utilized this program. They have gone through this either on the treatment aspect or they have received the treatment themselves. And so I want everybody to know that we believe in it so much that we know that it works. So we ask them to trust us, that we will get you your help, that we do care. You're not just a number that's pumped through our system. You're not a face or a check in the box. You're not, a data point for us to get more money. Like I said, I'll do my best to fund it myself to get you the help that you need, and that means a lot to me to be able to affect and change one life, and then continue to do that. And so that's what I want people to know is that we are very different. I know there's a lot of other organizations that they can choose. There's a lot of other organizations that are out there that are doing great work. But we care specifically about the individual and getting you the help the long lasting help that they need.
Jennifer?
I think that when someone's going through a mental injury and they're trying to navigate the traditional medical system and specifically, the American medical system, it can feel frustrating and it can feel isolating and it can feel impossible. And when Steve and I were talking about this, it really was just like, hey, we have the answer. And if we're not going to do it, then who is? And so I think what I want people to know is, number one, when you're in that dark pit, like, you're not alone. And then Steve also said it really well. We're going to climb into that dark pit with you. We're going to get you out of there. And we have really dedicated our lives to being the ones who make this system effective. And we intend to completely redefine the way that healthcare is perceived and offered for first responders and veterans, and we're going to do that for you. Like Steve said, we care. You're not alone. So if you need us, then visit us on our website. Steve and I will always respond. If you've got questions via email, hit up the contact, and we'll get back to you, because at the end of the day, we do care, and that's what makes us different.
So Shield and Stripes is obviously a really awesome program. For anybody listening, there's an application process. Go to their website, shieldandstripes.com and blitz.com, right?
Shieldandstripes.org.
Shieldandstripes.org. There's an application process. If you really like what you've heard today and it has motivated you, and you want to volunteer your time, even your checkbook, obviously there's a process in place. You have two outstanding individuals, and Steve and Jennifer here, that are doing awesome things. Reach out to Shields and Stripes, and be an awesome human, because they got a group of awesome humans doing awesome human things for awesome humans. And I recommend you do that. I commend you both. I think this is such an awesome program. I think differently about therapy and the way it's perceived. I think more of my performance now than I ever have before. I think about how every aspect of my life, just from our initial conversation, Jen, and then going and seeking some assistance myself, I think differently about it, and I think more of a performance, like how am I performing? in all aspects of the word. So I thank you both for coming on today. I know you're both busy and you have a lot of stuff going on and you're trying to grow this awesome organization. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I wish you guys the best. We'll have to do something again in the future as Shields and Stripes grows, so we can just kind of keep showing the awesome programs that you guys do. So thank you for coming, and I'll leave it for any parting words you guys want to throw out there.
I think it's an honor. Thank you for having us to be able to talk about Shields and Stripes. Steve and I jump on every opportunity to do it because we obviously really believe in what we're doing, and we really believe it's gonna change lives. So thank you for having us on your podcast. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to join again in the future, especially as we continue to grow and develop our progress, and potentially share the story about why this was even started in the first place, the experiences that I went through. One of the questions, or one of the things you mentioned early on in the podcast was you didn't know you needed it. You didn't know it was a thing that was there. Most people don't.
Right.
I didn't know I didn't needed it. Symptoms that I didn't know I had. And so one thing that you think it's much like the movies where you're waking up in sweats and, or experiencing these wild flashbacks. Well, it ain't typically like that. Most PTSD responses are very different, and our anxiety or irritable levels we think are normal or not normal. Again, if you feel like you have any of these symptoms of sleep disorders, anxiety, depression, not feeling right, absolutely reach out to us. Like Jen said, we answer just about every single one of, not just about, we do answer every single one of our emails, text messages, phone calls. I will get back to you. That is my phone number that's out there in the interwebs. So I am a regular human being. I will respond to you. I'm not too hard to get hold of. So I appreciate it. Everybody listening, and again, any support, big or small, I'll take a 1 cent. I'll take $1. I'll take $5. Whatever they can spare. It'll go to helping another person.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We'll do it again in the future. We'll stay in touch because I definitely want to know how this program grows and how the organization grows. And again, thank you all so much for coming on, and please take care, and we'll stay in touch. And as always, thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on, and check out jeffclarkofficial.com for more. You can also see previews of new episodes and more on social media. Just search COA Pod USA. That's COA Pod USA. Follow, like, and of course subscribe. And remember, always forward, never behind.